Our next candidate is running for State Senate in the 11th Senate District, which is where we are located, and that's John Liu. John.
Thank you very much, Warren, and thank you, Phil, for moderating this very special event. And it is really a privilege to be before the Bay Terrace Community Alliance once again. I feel like it was just yesterday that I was here last at a candidate forum. I want to tell you, Janet, that I will be there on the 14th, and maybe I'll see you at the train station again before then. And also, I want to thank Assemblymember Ed Braunstein for being part of this. I mean, look, Ed is facing an uphill battle in this year's re-election effort against write-in candidate. So you better at least show up to vote. You need at least one vote to win, Ed. And I think that speaks volumes to the incredible work that he's been doing. In a relatively short period in the State Assembly, he's really hit the ground running. My name's John Liu, and I am running for State Senate. I'm running in an area that I have lived pretty much my whole life. Grew up here. In fact, I just came from Waldbaum's at Bay Terrace. I lament the fact that they closed Peter Pan down. I used to hang out there all the time when I was a kid. And now I'm raising my own family, although this next generation is not interested in Peter Pan. My son, who's 13 now, he's more interested in playing on internet-based games, which make me a little bit nervous sometimes. But in any event, it's a new generation, and we move on. But what doesn't change is the fact that we have an incredible community right here at Bay Terrace and in Northeast Queens, a place that really is very special in many ways, and a place that I'm going to do everything I possibly can to preserve the quality of life, to use my experience as city controller, understanding the budget, making sure that the state budget is going to be favorable to our schools, our libraries, our senior centers, our parks, things that people actually need, to use my experience both legislatively as well as fiscally to help reduce the property tax burden that face co-op owners in this area as well as in many other parts of Queens. And to also understand, apply my real-world knowledge as gained in my many years in the private sector. I am not somebody who grew up in politics. I've got my degree in mathematical physics. I was professionally an actuary for most of my adult career. I left my job as a manager at a company called PricewaterhouseCoopers because I saw a lot of things that were happening here in Queens and in New York, and I complained about a lot of things. Tyler Castle, who succeeded me as president of the North Flushing Civic Association, which is what I was before I was elected, knows I complained about a lot of things. And my wife, Jenny, said, "You complain about a lot of things. Why don't you try to do something about it?" And that's what led me into politics in the first place. And so I am really happy to have the opportunity to once again introduce myself to many of you. Great to see some longtime friends. And I'm very much looking forward to answering the questions. Any and all questions, the toughest ones hopefully will get asked as opposed to being not asked. And I thank you once again for taking the time out of what turned out to be a very, very pleasant summer night to be in here with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for joining us tonight. And so we will start with, I guess, the tough questions.
All right, the tougher the better.
When you were running for mayor, questions were raised concerning your campaign's fundraising. Right. It's also been reported that your campaign for controller still owes the city $525,000 in fines for illegally hanging posters around the city. Address those issues, please.
2 minutes? I'll try to be as concise as possible. And if anybody has any more questions about this, I'll be around towards the end. Look. They came after me on the campaign finance issue. I was very vigorous and rigorous in my work as controller. I went after city contracts that were wasting your money. I audited city agencies that were wasting a ton of taxpayers' funds. I had an investment record that nobody could criticize, 51% on your pension funds over the 4 years that I was controller. And I saved billions of dollars by using Wall Street techniques to refinance our outstanding debt. All in all, saved $5 billion of taxpayers' money during the 4 years I was there. So what did they come after me on? Campaign finance issues. They investigated me for years and years. They wiretapped my cell phones, my home phones, all the phones that were associated with me. They subpoenaed 1 million documents. They interrogated thousands of my supporters. And at the end of the day, there was nothing they could accuse me of. I have not been accused of anything. So they then proceeded, they then So they then proceeded to set up somebody who worked for me, my former campaign treasurer. She is going through a process. She has not done anything wrong, and I will stand by her any day, any night. And at the end of the day, when she gets through her appeals process, it is going to be fine for her and her family. But really, as I said last year, some of you who were here may have heard this, I am now be standing before you as the most thoroughly investigated candidate in the history of New York City, and I have not been accused of a single thing. As far as the poster summonses from 2009, let's be very clear. In 2009, a lot of candidates running for citywide office hung up a lot of posters. I often ask my staff, how come all these other candidates have all their posters up and we don't have any posters up? In any event, I'll use some of my time in the next question to answer this question.
Well, the follow-up will allow you to...
Okay, so I get 1 minute for a follow-up. They're running a tight ship here. Look, it is a process. I contested those fines, and in 2010, every single one of those summonses was thrown out. They were absolutely dismissed. Then what happened was City Hall meddled in the process, and somehow they came up and reissued summonses for violations that were alleged to have occurred 2 years prior, which nobody had ever heard of the city ever doing that. So at this point, I am appealing those summonses because they were unfair summonses to begin with. And if at the end of the day, my campaign is found liable for that money, I will certainly pay it. To me, the money's not the issue, it's the principle here. And so I'm not going to pay unfair fines until I get my due justice in the courts, which is outside the control of the Bloomberg administration. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a question which was already asked for the incumbent state senator and state assembly member. I'll ask it to you and a little variance of it. Would you support the reinstatement of the New York City commuter tax if you're elected, because it's estimated to bring in $856 million into the New York City coffers? And since it has not been able to get through recently, what can you do to get it through if you're elected?
Well, thank you very much. And yes, I absolutely support the reinstatement of the New York City commuter tax. I think that people who commute into the city, though they don't live here, they spend the majority of their waking hours in the city. If something happens to them, if there's a fire, if there's a potential crime, they use the subways, which are subsidized by city money as well. They get the benefits of New York City taxpayers and New York City government, and they should pay their fair share. I mean, we're not asking them to pay something that they shouldn't be paying. They are using, that's too, you still have the one, okay. They should pay their fair share. So the quick answer is yes, absolutely, I support the reinstatement. It is politically difficult, as Ed Braunstein mentioned, but I think that once we regain the majority, a real Democratic majority in the state Senate, I think we can push that much further along. Thank you.
John, the Gotham Gazette, referencing the same article that I did earlier, they reported Lou says that if elected, one of his personal quests will be to focus on restructuring the tax burden on businesses so that small businesses get a break while larger ones pay their fair share. So my question is, what would that restructuring encompass, involve? What would it look like?
Thank you. As comptroller, I looked at the finances and the economy of this city and beyond, and I did propose a number of reforms. For example, in our business tax code, we have huge loopholes that allow the biggest corporations in this city to get away from not paying some of the major taxes. Insurance companies, for example, do not pay general corporation tax. Meanwhile, every single other business in New York City pays general corporation tax. It's basically the income tax for businesses, large or small. And so the general corporation tax needs to be imposed on insurance companies. That frees up $300 million that then can be used to give tax breaks, eliminate the general corporation tax, not for the big insurance companies, but the small mom and pop stores everywhere around the city. And when you do that, not only do you give consumers a greater choice, you allow these small businesses to build up their business, but you also incentivize hiring. And if some of these small businesses are able to hire just one additional person, then all of a sudden you're talking about the creation of thousands of jobs all across the city and potentially the state if we apply it to the statewide model. Thank you.
I have a question that is from the audience as well as one that I would like to ask. And please tell us your positions on fracking, hydraulic fracking, and if there's another means of getting energy besides that for New York State.
I am adamantly opposed to fracking. There is something that, I think it's a pretty crazy practice for the environment. It destroys the environment. And there's nothing, I don't think there's any question about that. But then to do it in our water supply is just absolutely insane. And we have seen the results of fracking in barren parts of the country where the environmental consequences have been disastrous. So let's not bring something like that to New York. I am in full favor of a strict moratorium on all fracking in the state of New York. Now, as comptroller, I also went after many of the big companies that engaged in fracking, not in New York State, but in other states as well, to get them to see the real economic and environmental costs of the fracking practice. And we asked them and forced them to give us the data that shows how environmentally damaging the fracking practice can be. And so the bottom line conclusion, no fracking way.
John, but 2-minute closing.
That's it.
Sure, you want more punishment,
I'll
John?
take more questions. Well, like I said, if anybody has any questions, I'll be around.
Well, I one quick question that's been an issue in the city anyway. What is your position on the Central Park horse-drawn carriages?
Well, they've been a part of our city's history for like 150 to 200 years. And it is my understanding, and I have seen firsthand how the horses are treated. I mean, it is my opinion, based on what I've seen, that they are not abused. And I believe that they are also an important part of the tourist draw for the city of New York. They've been part of our city. They're part of our city's landscape. And so I do believe that we have to ensure, and I believe the city's Department of Consumer Affairs, as well as other agencies, have a strict monitoring system to ensure that the animals and the horses are not mistreated. So we have to maintain that kind of high standard for the treatment of the horses. But I do believe that they've been a part of our city's history and landscape for so long, and there's no reason to get them out.
Thank you, John. Now we're 2-minute closing.
Well, I appreciate this opportunity to talk with all of you about some of these most salient issues facing us. To go to the state Senate would be a tremendous privilege. Some have questioned, well, how do you go from being city controller to running for mayor to now running for state senate? The answer is simple. I get a chance to represent my neighbors, my friends, a place that I've called home, and I've not called any other place in my life home. I am an immigrant. I came from Taiwan, born in Taiwan. Many of you know my favorite line. I was made in Taiwan. I've got this tag on my neck back here. But I came in when I was 5. I became a citizen when I'm 10. I grew up in the public schools here, and honestly, I never imagined that someone like me could ever run for office, let alone get elected to the city council, get elected citywide as comptroller, and actually be a candidate for mayor. It's an amazing city. It's a city that my family and I owe a tremendous debt of gratitude towards. And that's why I ran for office in the first place, because I complained a lot, but I also saw it as a chance to give something back. I'm not a career politician. I'm not a political science study. I'm an average person who had a long career in the private sector, but I'm trying to do something back, to give something back. When I left the comptroller's office in December, I did not follow the footsteps of most other comptrollers who use their knowledge of public finance and municipal finance and go to Wall Street and make the big bucks. I certainly had my opportunities. But instead, I took my knowledge of municipal finance and I went to Baruch College. And so now, even my wife calls me Professor, Professor Lou. So I've been teaching teaching municipal finance for the master's program at Baruch College, and believe it or not, classes start next week. So I'll be back on campus, at least in the first week of the end of this primary campaign. It would be a tremendous privilege to be your representative, your fighter and advocate in the New York State Senate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Thank you.